Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Influential Motherhood podcast, where we talk about motherhood, work, self-care, and how moms are changing the world. I'm your host, Melissa Duncan, and I'm excited that it is Thanksgiving week. I posted on Instagram today at Influential Motherhood about pacing yourself through the holiday week, which I think is so important in this season of chaos. We're juggling work, travel, wild kiddos, extended family, shopping, big meals, and just general overstimulation. So pace yourself and know that the things that need to get done will get done. I'm so excited to introduce you to one of my favorite new Instagram friends, Heather Brooker. She is sharing with us what it's like to experience motherhood in Hollywood and how she has navigated some big, unexpected shifts in her career over the years. Let's get to chatting. On today's episode of Influential Motherhood, I'm talking with Heather Brooker, who is a mom, an actress. She's an Emmy award-winning journalist, and she's host of the very popular podcast Motherhood in Hollywood, which is really fun to listen to, Heather, because you have such really amazing guests on your podcast, talking about some pretty cool things with regard to the show business and just how to kind of some how-tos with regard to Hollywood, which I think is fun. And then Heather has also appeared on TV shows like Grey's Anatomy, The Middle, The Mindy Project, and Lopez. And on top of all of that, you are the contributing entertainment reporter for NBC-LA. So you must have more than 24 hours in your day.
I do. It's magic. I don't know how that happens. No.
I mean, it sounds that way. But I'm excited to talk with you today. We've been, I guess, Instagram friends for a little while now. And it's been fun to follow along and see the cool things that you get to do. So I'm looking forward to hearing about these things here kind of live and in person. So why don't you, Heather, start out by telling us a little bit more about you and how you got started in the entertainment industry.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me on your show. I'm very excited to talk with you. I actually, I was a reporter. I graduated from college as a reporter, and I traveled all over the world as an international correspondent and in local news in various markets in the Midwest, in Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri. But even before that, I was a theater scholar at Oklahoma State University. I always had a love of theater and a passion for making people laugh and entertaining and telling stories. And I kind of went into journalism with a little bit different take on helping people tell their story. And I thought it was a more grounded career choice, if you will, rather than, being an actress. I was a little intimidated by being an actress when I was 21 years old. I didn't know what to do. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go into journalism. And it ended up being one of the best decisions I ever made because I have been in the journalism field for going on 20 years, and I've loved it. I love telling stories. I love helping people tell their stories. And probably about 13, 14 years ago, I really missed acting, and I missed performing and making people laugh. And so I started doing short films and plays that led to commercials in Tulsa at the time where my husband and I lived. And, we just said, you know what, let's just take a leap of faith and let's move to California and try, your hand at acting, and let's see if it works and see if I can make a career out of this. So we did the whole Grapes of Wrath move from Oklahoma to California, and we came out here and just sort of were, settled and looking to create a life out here, and we've loved it. So I started auditioning. I got an agent. I started taking classes. I went to the Groundlings for improv and sketch comedy.
Oh, that's awesome.
And just really felt at home here. But I never quit journalism. I always still worked in local news stations here in LA for a job, because as an actor, you do still have to make money. I mean, California is not cheap.
Yeah.
So, as nice as it would be to just be an actor and hope I get, parts every now and then, I had to have a job. So I've always worked in the newsrooms and always kept one foot in the door as far as news. So that's sort of how we made it out to LA and how I got in entertainment. And yeah, like you said, I've been on a bunch of TV shows like The Office. Of course, now they're all all falling out of my brain. All of
Grey's
the
Anatomy.
shows, they all just literally fell out of my brain. But so many TV shows, and I love it. I love performing. I love making people laugh. I love telling a story, whether it's in front of the camera to you on my Instagram, whether it's as an actor, as a character that someone else has written. It's just something I really enjoy doing.
That's so interesting that you felt kind of, I think, I can't remember the word that you just used around acting, when you were 21 years old, but what do you feel like changed for you in terms of wanting to pursue it later in your career?
I was, 21 years old. At the time, you think you know everything and you
Right.
feel like you're, I could take on the world. And I, though, have always been a very grounded person. And my husband can tell you this too. We've known each other since I was 21. And I've always been a very grounded and very self-aware person. And I had a little bit of a crisis of confidence when I was like 19, thinking, what am I going to do with a theater degree from Oklahoma State University?
Yeah.
And at the time, all of my friends in my class were all moving to New York and going to perform on Broadway. Well, I'm not a triple threat. I'm not a trained dancer. I'm not a trained singer. I just knew that I loved to act. I wanted to be Carol Burnett and make people laugh and do funny, silly things. So I had this moment where and LA was never an option. Like I never even thought about moving out to California to try to pursue film and television. It was always, I'm going to do Broadway or do theater. And the idea of going to New York and starving myself, waiting tables or whatever, hoping to catch a big break, just didn't sound appealing. And I also didn't really want to teach. I wasn't really a good, educator. I would not have made a good teacher. So I knew that about myself. I was very self-aware and I knew that. So I started, kind of looking around when I was in college and saying, what else can I do that would allow me to still tell stories, but also have a little bit of a performance element? And it was journalism, broadcast journalism. So that's how I went into journalism. And I did that for many years. Like like I said, I've traveled all over the world. I have been to Africa. I've been to West Africa. I've been to Israel. I've been all over Europe, all over the United States, just telling stories and being a reporter. But I started to kind of feel like, okay, what's next? I found that whenever I would be out covering a big breaking news story or something, I couldn't wait for the end of the report because then I could make my cameraman laugh. Or I could make, somebody laugh or bring a smile to their face. So I started talking to my husband about it, and I just really felt like I needed to let that side of myself shine because it had been somewhat stifled. It was
for a long time.
For a long time. I kind of put it away and thought, nope, I'm a serious journalist now. This is what I do. And once I kind of started letting that fun side of myself out again, that acting side, I was like, no, this is what I need to do. This is what I'm here on this earth to do. And as much as I do love journalism, I love acting and performing even more. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I think a lot of people would hear about your job and say, this sounds really cool, right? I mean, you get to interview the cast of Frozen 2 and you get to do some really cool things. Are there any parts of it that never get old? And you can probably anticipate the counterpart to that question, which is, are there any parts that
get old?
Definitely get old.
The parts that never get old are definitely the parts where I get to share in the joy and excitement of the moment of wherever I am, but whatever I'm doing, whether it's a red carpet, whether it's a press junket, whether I'm about to interview Kristen Bell or Matt Damon or, whoever. It's that joy and excitement of me being like, you guys, this is really cool. I want to share this with you. I'm so excited. Like that is genuinely me. And me genuinely wanting to share these moments with whoever might be watching and whoever might be interested. So I that's my hope, is that people can see that and catch that joy. And I think as far as like the parts that get old is, it's a lot of work What you don't see, and what I don't show as often, and maybe I could, but it's not as exciting, is there's a lot of standing around. And when you go to the red carpet, sometimes you're standing there for 3 or 4 hours just waiting to get that 2-minute interview with one of the stars of the movie. So you're just sort of standing and you're waiting. And, there's some people that show up in their heels and they're all in like full dress or whatever. And I'm like, I'm an old lady. I'm not doing that. I'm wearing my tennis shoes. I'm going to be comfortable. Nobody cares if this old mom is in sneakers or not. Like even if I was walking the red carpet, I would be like, whatever. Just be comfortable. Like there's so much pressure to look a certain way and carry yourself a certain way. And I refuse to buy into that. And I refuse to put that out there. I'm myself. I want to be comfortable. And I want people to see whatever I'm sharing with them, whatever the story might be, rather than, oh, look how, amazing her hair is, or look at her shoes, or look at her dress, So yeah, that's the part that gets old, is the standing around and waiting.
Yeah, because you're right. That's not something that we would.
No, you guys will be like, wow, this is boring.
Well, it's funny because, you think about the production that we end up seeing, and it's bouncing from interview to interview. And so you think that's all it is.
It's
just
all rapid fire.
Yeah, like rapid fire.
Or Access Hollywood, it looks like it's like, wow, they got this person, this person, this person. But what you don't see is they waited for probably 3 hours to get all those people. Like the worst are like the big award shows.
Yeah.
Or like the People's Choice Awards were this weekend, or like any music award shows. You're standing there forever. And what happens is publicists come up to you and they pitch their clients. And a lot of times it's someone you've never heard of. And you don't want to be rude and be like, I'm sorry, I don't know who that is. And chances are, if you don't know who it is and it's your job to know who people are, then your audience isn't going to know who it is either. Right. And so you have to make the decision, do I want to interview this person that nobody knows who they are? Like, it's just, and then you feel bad because you're like, I'm sorry, I'm not interested in that interview. And then you feel bad because this person's trying to make it. And, it's just, so there's things like that you don't see happening behind the red carpet, on the red carpet. And then you also get publicists who are kind of nasty. They'll come up and be like, why don't you want to interview my client? And
gosh.
Like, yeah. It can get a little nasty, but all you see is the finished product, the highlights, the quick, fun little soundbite interviews with people.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Who knew all that was happening behind the scenes?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Drama on the carpet. I was always joke about like I should write a book like Tales from the Red Carpet.
Oh, that would be
tell you like
major hit.
Who has the nicest publicist and who has like the meanest publicist? Because I have a list.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure there is a list. That's really funny. So in the midst of all of this, you started Motherhood in Hollywood, which I love. And so I guess, how did that come to be? And how has that been a place for you to kind of pour into? Like, what has that done for you, I guess, in terms of pouring into your career goals and your growth in the profession?
Well, I should say that Motherhood in Hollywood actually came before my job as a reporter at NBC. And it's actually how I got my job as a reporter at NBC. So my daughter was almost 2. And I was full-time stay-at-home mom and actor, waiting between auditions. It was great because I would stay at home with her and go to auditions, and ended up working out really great. And then I worked part-time on the weekends at NBC, and I was really creatively feeling like I needed an outlet, and I also needed to connect with other moms in my industry. Acting and entertainment in particular isn't like an office job where you go to and you have other moms or dads in the office to swap stories with or sort of commiserate with. We're all very freelance based. So we're all sort of left to our houses or the parks or whatever to meet other moms. And it can be difficult. So I was feeling very lonely because none of my friends had kids. I'd only had a couple mom friends from the Mommy and Me class that I took, but most of them all went back to work. And so just feeling really isolated. And I was like, why isn't there, I know there's other moms who are actors, they're out there somewhere. So I was like, why isn't there some kind of community or way we can all connect together? So I was trying to think of something I could do to fulfill a creative need that I had, but also to meet other moms and invite them to come over to my house for coffee or wine or, just to have conversation. And the podcast seemed like a perfect way to do that. So about 4.5 years ago, I launched Motherhood in Hollywood, where I would invite over people who I knew and people who I wanted to get to know. And everyone from actors, producers, directors, writers, to stylists, to makeup artists. Anyone in the entertainment industry who wanted to come and talk with me and get to know me. And it really started to take off, and it grew and grew. And I created a website, and then I started my social media, and I started really focusing. I realized like social was so important to getting the word out about my podcast. So I really focused on my Instagram and Facebook, and started growing. And now Motherhood in Hollywood has almost 200 episodes and several, like maybe a dozen or more little bonus, tiny little 5-minute or more episodes. And it sort of grew into this thing. And then it was a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, my boss at NBC, where I was a part-time producer and writer, talked to me. He said he followed my podcast and he followed my adventures on Instagram, and he was like, you know what? I think this is really fun. I think you do a really great job. Have you ever considered going back into reporting and coming and doing that for us on our digital team? And I was like, what? No. I was like, I'm an old lady now. Like, no one would ever want me to be I hadn't done reporting in that way in over a decade. So I kind of had thought that chapter of my career and of my life had closed. Because out here I had people like agents and other people tell me like, you don't look like a typical LA reporter because you're overweight, you're older, you look like a very Midwestern kind of gal. And I'm like, well, I am a Midwestern gal. I'm from Oklahoma. So they were like, I kind of let that, get into my head. Like, oh, you don't look like how everyone else looks, so this would never work for you. But then once the opportunity was presented to me, I was like, oh, you know what? I actually do think I could do this. I love movies. I love TV. I love talking about them. And I love the fact that I can do it with my daughter and take her to all of these fun things with me. And yeah, like I could do this.
Yeah, so why not, right?
Yeah, why not? So, I mean, I really just felt like it was an opportunity that just kind of presented itself, and I would have been really foolish not to take it and try it. So I accepted his offer, and I became the first ever digital entertainment reporter at NBC-LA.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm the first ever plus size reporter they've ever had at NBC in Los Angeles, and probably all of NBC. But
that's
yeah,
wonderful though.
Yeah, it was really it was such a gift and such a great opportunity that it combined the things that I loved doing, and they were going to pay me for it, and I can still act. Like I can still, when auditions come up, I can still go on auditions and still do the things that I love to do. So I definitely Motherhood in Hollywood came first, and that sort of ushered in this second phase of my life, my third career, I guess, because it's so funny because I keep like bouncing back and forth between like I was a theater major in college, then I went into journalism, and then I went into acting, and now I'm somehow back into journalism.
Now you're going back into journalism.
Yeah, so it's this weird like back and forth. But I love it. It's two things that I absolutely love to do, and I'm so happy to get to do it.
Yeah. Well, you're obviously very skilled at all of those things.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, these opportunities wouldn't keep presenting themselves if you weren't. And so I think that you've positioned yourself in a way where these opportunities keep coming, which is wonderful. And I mentioned before we started recording that I was listening to your most recent episode of your podcast, and you, in the introduction, were talking about how you've started to see a shift towards doing more of what you called your part-time job, but when you say that, you're talking about your reporting job,
right.
not the acting.
Right.
And you kind of talked for a few minutes about how you've been open to that and are doing some, I think you used the word reprioritizing, so that you can kind of accommodate that change and just be available more for it. And so as I'm hearing your story, I'm hearing that that's kind of a trend for you, that changes start to get into motion, where, it's at some points more acting, and at some points you're staying at home, and then at some points journalism is coming back. And you seem very open to that ebb and flow professionally. And I think for a lot of women, we kind of dig our heels into what we think the path should look like. And I suspect a lot of us miss professional opportunities because we have blinders on and or our heels are kind of dug in.
Right.
And we think, well, that's not what I'm, using air quotes, supposed to be doing right now.
Right.
And then we're missing opportunities. So do you feel like that's just part of kind of who you are and how you're made, is to stay open? Or do you have to be really intentional about being open to those opportunities?
If I'm being honest, I have to be very intentional about it. It's
Yeah.
not something I can just casually be like, cool, now this is happening. Oh, awesome.
Let's go with
let's
it.
go into this. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I wish I was that, free flowing, like, go with the flow kind of gal. But I'm a big planner. I plan out everything in my day, my conversations, my calendar is always full. I can't. That's not to say I'm not impulsive and I don't have those moments of sort of life improvisation, but I definitely like to weigh pros and cons. I like to make sure that I'm, there's a way out if I do take a leap of something and it's like, ooh, this was not a good choice. I like to make sure that I'm going to be covered if I need to back out of it. But I also, have learned to, and my husband is really great, and I'm so lucky to have him, a great person that reminds me that I do have a skill set and talents, and I do have experience that is worthwhile. And I'm not just some random lady off of the internet who got, this awesome job or whatever. He's like, Heather, you're an Emmy award-winning journalist.
Yeah.
You deserve to have this
That
job.
means
And I'm
something.
like, oh yeah. I'm like, oh yeah. He's like, you didn't just start doing news. He's like, you've been doing it for 20 years. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. So it's very helpful to have somebody who's so supportive and, gently encourages me and nudges me in those directions. But I think about it a lot. I weigh pros and cons, and I always, want to make sure I'm making the right step. And sometimes I'm not always sure. And you just sort of have to take a little bit of a leap of faith. And like with this job in particular, I had a lot of self-doubt because I was like, mostly like, I'm older, I'm overweight. Are people going to take me seriously? Because I kind of got labeled as a mommy blogger with my podcast, even though I'm not a blogger.
Oh, that's interesting.
I was a little concerned about that.
Yeah.
And I just kind of put that aside and said, you know what? This is something I'm really good at. It's something I'm really going to enjoy, and they're going to pay me to do it as my job. So
yeah,
I just jumped at it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and if they believe in you and your skill, enough to make the offer and be willing to pay, then I think, and I'm kind of saying that out loud to myself and to the women out there, I think we suffer from that imposter syndrome often. And it's easy for us to kind of fall into that self-talk where we're like, I don't know, somebody else would be better at it, or whatever the qualification might be. And so good for your husband for talking in a positive way for you.
He talks me off of a lot of ledges.
Yes.
He's so like, you got this, babe. You got this.
I love that. So does your daughter is how old? Remind me.
She's six and a half, as she likes to tell
Okay.
me.
I have a 6.5-year-old too. So
nice.
I
So
get it. Yes, I get it. And if he could count the days towards 7, he would be. So I totally get it. So do you feel like she has an understanding of kind of your job and your career? And I'm kind of curious, what are her thoughts on motherhood in Hollywood and your career so far? And does she have any interest in kind of heading in the entertainment direction as far as you can tell at age 6?
Well, it's interesting because she has been here from the beginning. Obviously, she's the intro and outro of my podcast.
Yes, it's so cute.
It's her little tiny 2-year-old voice going, "Come on, mama!" And that was just like a little fun we were having with the microphones when I was setting everything up. And she, it was for a while, she would go, she would think that daddy went to work all day and mommy just stayed home and waited for her to come back from like preschool or whatever.
Oh.
Like, so I don't think she visually understood that I work, and a lot of my work is in my office, or she never saw me go to work, but she saw daddy leave every day.
Mm-hmm.
I think she definitely gets it now because I've taken her with me to enough things, and she sees that my work is on camera. She knows that I'm a reporter. She will sometimes pick up my iPad or my phone or something and pretend to be recording videos. And she'll be explaining to people what is happening in the living room and like, in the car or whatever it might be. She's kind of mimicking what I do. And she definitely has been to auditions with me before, so she knows that's a big part of mommy's job. And so she gets it. She knows that my work is a little different. Like she knows daddy goes to an office all day and mommy goes to movies and goes, it's just it's a little different. And she has leanings towards entertainment, in that I think she's very funny. I think she's very talented in her own way, but I have asked her if she wants to do any sort of acting or anything like that, and she doesn't really want to. She doesn't really have an interest. I mean, I'm not sure she fully understands what would be involved with it, because I know she also loves to tell jokes and likes to entertain in her way.
Yeah.
But it's also not something I bring up with her a lot or try to push her into, because it's not an easy career and it's not an easy job. And I also just want her to be a kid and enjoy her life and find out what she is good at and what she enjoys, like everybody else does,
Yeah, absolutely.
I have so many friends out here who literally give birth and then have headshots for their kids and are taking them to auditions and getting them on TV shows. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And they're like, they do it for college money or whatever. And I totally understand that. But I'm like, I kind of just want her to be a kid and find herself, just in everyday life and through playing with her friends and, playing with us and, living her life. And if she comes to me one day and says, I really want to be an actor, or I really want to do comedy, or I really want to be a performer of some kind, I will definitely help her and encourage her. But for now, I'm just kind of letting her do her thing, do what she wants to do. So,
yeah. Well, sounds like it's a tough industry to put a kid into if they don't really want to be in it. Right. And so, and that applies to adults too. Tough industry to be in if you don't really want to be in it. So, I think that's a great and I think very solid mom decision. So, yeah. Yeah. So as you kind of think about your role as a mom in Hollywood, and the work that you do, and it sounds like y'all are very busy as a family, just given all the different roles that you play in terms of, auditioning and acting and also reporting and then being a mom and a wife. What would you say is your best mom hack? And so I love to ask moms this because it's good. It's fun to hear the tricks of the trade that moms have in order to kind of get their family through those really busy, chaotic weeks.
Well, for me, because I have so many balls in the air that I'm juggling between my job, my business, Motherhood in Hollywood, my acting life, which auditions are, probably at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, and then mom life stuff. And then occasionally I'd like to see my friends. Occasionally I get to see
every now and then.
Every now and then. I really have to sort of partition out my time. So I try not to just sit on Instagram and troll around and scroll through stuff. Like I get on, I comment, I check everybody's stuff out, and then I get out.
Yeah, that's
and I
smart.
try to go on and do other things. Now, that being said, there's a lot of things in my week that slip through the cracks. Like my house is not always as clean as I was like for it to be.
Yeah.
I go in like spurts of like, oh, let's clean. Today I have a few free hours. Let's clean everything. My child sometimes will have to stay at the after school program a little bit longer than I would like for her to, because I may be stuck in an interview or stuck on a press junket or something and like having to get back a little bit later.
Yeah.
So, there is a give and take that I think sometimes we moms and dads forget to allow themselves to have.
Yeah.
I know my house isn't going to be perfect, and that's okay.
Right.
Because I know I'll clean it up eventually,
Yep.
and we'll be right as rain and back on track. I can't let myself get bogged down in the things that I just can't get to in the day. I used to get really stressed out to the point where I wouldn't be going to sleep until after 12 or 1 because I would be returning emails, returning texts,
Yeah.
commenting on everybody's social media, because it's important. If somebody takes the time to comment on my stuff, then I want to return the favor and I want to reply back to them and make sure they know I see them and it means something to me. And I take that very seriously. So it's a give and take, and you have to know that some things are going to work out great and some things just aren't, but you just have to do better next time or try better next time and just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know
That's
that's
great
kind
advice.
of, I don't know if that's lame advice, but
No, it's great.
It's just sort of what we do. You can't just go, this didn't work out the way I wanted. And then you just give up, you just go, okay, well, we'll get him next time,
Yeah. Well, I think it's important for moms to hear from other busy, successful moms that their houses are not clean either. I think because I think the
Yeah.
reality is probably that none of our houses are Instagram clean,
Oh,
you know?
no. Even the Instagram people's houses are not as clean.
Right.
I
It's
have
like that little
literally been in
corner of
people's
the
houses
room.
where they shift everything over. I've even done that where I'm like, let's move everything off the table so I can take this picture.
I know.
Like, let's be real. And sometimes I just leave it all there. And I'm sure people are like, oh my gosh, she's so messy. One thing I will say is that I have allowed myself to start asking for help.
That's good.
Several
Yeah.
months ago, I talked to Chris about it and I was like, it really is driving me crazy that the house isn't clean. Do we have it in our budget to hire someone to come by every couple of weeks to help me clean and get organized or whatever? And we made the time to do it. And it did make a difference. It made me very nervous because I don't like having strangers in my house.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know if I can do this for a while. But every once in a while, I will have somebody come over and like help me clean. And like, then I'm like, for a few days, my house is clean. I can like relax about that. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always want to encourage people, if there is an area of your life where you can get help, whether it's from a friend or if it's something you can pay for or whatever, go ahead and do it. Treat yourself because it really does make a difference. It really, really does.
It really
make a difference.
does. Yeah. And it's not a sign of weakness.
No. And
Or
that was the problem I
inability to
was
do
having.
things.
Yeah, that was a hang up I was having is I was like, oh my gosh, I'm failing because I'm not able to do all of these things. And part of being successful is knowing where to delegate things that you need to get done. And
That's so
even
true.
in your own home, like,
Yeah.
it's also not reasonable to expect my husband to come home every night from work and then clean the house every day or, cook dinner or whatever. It's not reasonable to expect him to do that either. So, and also not my 6-year-old. So,
Yeah.
so we all do our part as much as we can, but then it's also okay to delegate things in your life where you need help and areas where you need help. That's every successful business, every successful person has that help.
Yeah, that's so true. And the delegation is, like you said, crucial to, I think, the success of the family,
Sure.
which is the ultimate goal. So, yeah, that's great. So as we start to wrap up, I would love to hear, as we're nearing the end of 2019. And so we're looking ahead to 2020. And what I love about kind of transitioning to a new year is that it is an opportunity to think about fresh ideas and goals. But I'm one to kind of say, you can have new ideas and goals at any point in time. You don't have to wait for the new year, but it is kind of a nice clean break. So as you look ahead to 2020, do you, Heather, have any goals that you want to kind of put out there that you could say, this is something that I'm going to be striving for? And it doesn't have to be huge, right? I mean, these don't have to be like massive goals, but just even something small that you hope to accomplish or do or see a change in 2020.
Yeah, for me, I think putting a focus on my health and my physical well-being is definitely a priority for me now and definitely moving forward because that's one area while I'm doing all of these jobs and running around doing all these things, that's the one area that I let go the most. that I don't give enough attention to, and
I
that's
think
my
a lot
health.
of us
And
do.
that's like, yeah, and a lot of moms do that because we all do get so busy and caught up in whatever it might be that's taking up the majority of our time, whether it is your kids, whether it's your job, whether it's family, whatever. So for me, I think taking better care of my health. And I don't just mean like an occasional spa day. I mean like true, which is nice.
Yeah,
but
that's nice
truly,
too.
but like truly making a conscious effort to exercise more,
Yeah.
to focus on better eating and maybe better multivitamins, like whatever the case may be. I'm also, my birthday is in a few days, and I also start getting very like, oh my gosh, it's the end of my life. I'm gonna die soon. What do I have to do? So I start like thinking all these ways I have to like take better care of myself. But that truly is something that I want to focus on moving forward, at least personally. And then professionally, I have some shows that I'm working on in development, some special segments that I'm working on with NBC that cannot wait to get out there and get into the world, and just really ride this as long as I can, this wave of opportunity, and see where it takes me.
Yeah, that's great. Do you plan to continue with the podcast? Because you're several years into it now, right?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am 200 episodes in. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to continue at least probably through the new year.
Yeah.
The podcast is something that I enjoy. It's the genesis of all of this, basically, at least all of Motherhood in Hollywood and my job, But it's also a lot of work. I do everything myself. I record, I edit myself, I do all of the posting, all the social media, advertising, all of that stuff. I do it myself. And it's a lot of work in the day when I have so many other things going on. And I also maybe want to take that hour and just spend it with my kid.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, it's a tough call. It's a tough call, but I'm definitely going to stick with it at least through the beginning of the year. For sure.
Well, that's, I think, an interesting perspective too, to have that, the time for that when you started it was a different set of circumstances than you're at now. So, there's a time for everything, I guess. So and so things have changed, but in a really good way. And so it'll be interesting to see how those things continue to shift, and your time, it sounds like it'll be spent maybe this time next year in ways that you might not be able to predict right now, which is exciting.
I'm so excited. That's what's just very exciting about being open to things. Like, you just never know where we could be a year from now or 2 years from now, Just got to be ready to grab whatever opportunity comes our way.
Yeah, I love that. That's such an important lesson for all of us. And I love that you are such a great example of that.
So thank you. So sweet.
Yeah, thank you. So tell everybody where we can find you. And I will be sure after you tell us that we link all of this in the show notes for the people who are in the car and folding laundry and can't stop what they're doing.
First of all, shout out to everybody folding laundry. Yep. I feel your pain. And everybody can find me at the Heather Brooker on Instagram and Facebook, and Heather Brooker over on Twitter, where I like to sometimes put random and funny comments. And then motherhoodinhollywood.com is where you can find my podcast episodes and all of the fun adventures that my daughter and I go on. And my podcast can be downloaded on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and it's a good one. It's a very good one.
So sweet. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, like I said, I'll link to all of that. And so when the laundry is folded, they can go check you out and follow along. You're a fun Instagram follow, because you do some fun things to see. All the little adventures that you and your daughter are going on are really fun to watch. So.
Yay. Oh, I'm so glad. That makes me so happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for sharing your story and this encouragement for other moms. I think that this is the kind of encouragement that we all need. So thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so thankful for the moms who share their stories on here on the show and in our fun Instagram community. I'd love for you to connect with me online at Influential Motherhood on Instagram and Facebook to continue the conversation or just say hello. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star rating and a written review in the Apple Podcast app. It's how you can help get the show in front of moms looking for episodes just like this one. I hope you'll find a way to influence your work or community for good this week. Don't forget, you can listen to other episodes or learn more about the show at www.influentialmotherhood.com. See you next week.